Right.
Please be seated. Good morning, members. I recognize that our chaplain is absent today. May I ask for a member to volunteer to open us in a word of prayer, please?
Madam Speaker, with your leave, if we can ask Brother Smith to open us up with a word.
Sure. Leave is granted. Mr. Smith, would you open us in a word of prayer, please? Let's stand.
Let us pray. Psalm 107 says, "Oh, praise the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endureth forever. Let the redeemed of the earth say so, who he have redeemed from the hand of the enemy." We are here in this honorable house today because of the goodness of the Lord, because of his mercies toward us. We are here to do the business of the people of this land. And we are asking, O Lord, for your guidance, your protection, your care, your deliverance. Give every one of us hearts of love and understanding. Give us wisdom that we may execute the work of the people in this land and beyond, for your name's honor and glory and for the benefit of the people. Be with the one for government business, be with those in the opposition, and as we all work together, let us respect one another's views, ideas, and opinions so that everything will run smoothly. Be with the honorable speaker and grant that everything will go to your name's honor and glory, we pray, in Jesus' name.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Mr. Smith. You may be seated, members. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member Rogers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. A pleasant good morning to all our colleagues here in this honorable house. Madam Speaker, may I beg leave of this honorable house to make a statement with regards to one of our fallen soldiers, Mr. Franklin Gums of Stoner Ground would have passed yesterday. Mr. Gums, Frank, as we all know him, would have been an Anguilla Day honoree, the past, and he was a true stalwart of the Anguilla Revolution. It is said that Mr. Gums may have been the one who would have driven the bulldozer across the airport to prevent the reinforcement of the force from St. Kitts at the time when the 67 invasion. So I would want to place on record, my personal and family, and of course, this honorable house, for the work that he would have done throughout the island. He was one of the first Anguillians who were around at the time. We know that they were not public roads. He would have operated the bulldozer, and pushed a number of public roads throughout Anguilla. We are today the beneficiaries of the work that he would have done over the years, and really would hope that his family would take solace in his passing. Also to express our condolences to the family, because within the last 60 days, really, his sister, Patsy, would have passed. Pastor Naril, his brother, would have passed recently, and now Brother Frank has departed as well. So I just want to place that on record, and with your permission, could have the honorable house, stand up for a moment of silence for the passing of one of our stalwarts of the Anguilla Revolution and a true patriotic Anguilla.
Noted. Members, may we take an observation of a moment of silence? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam.
Gratitude, and we extend condolences from the House to those that are bereaved. You have before you an agenda, an order paper that consists of the minutes as our first matter of business. The minutes were circulated from the second meeting of the first session. You should have them before you. I presume that you've read them. So unless there are any amendments, corrections, may I invite a member to move that those minutes be confirmed?
Madam Speaker, I rise to move that the minutes of the 22nd day of April 2025 be approved. Confirmed.
Thank you, member. Do we have a seconder to approve the minutes?
I rise to second, Madam Speaker.
Very grateful. I declare that the minutes circulated from the meeting of this House on the 22nd of April 2025 be approved. All in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Oath of allegiance to new members. Honorable Deputy Governor Acting.
I invite the Honorable Deputy Governor Acting to take the oath.
I, Bonnie Richardson Lake, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, his heirs and successors, according to the law. So God help me. So help me God.
Announcements by the direction of the Speaker.
In respect of the announcements, I just wish to report to this honorable House that the clerk, Mr. Proctor, and I are back from a very engaging time in the UK. We did make the announcement before the trip, but just by way of a very short announcement. During the week of May 12th to 16th, we both attended the Commons and Overseas Territories Conference in the UK, which was primarily held at Westminster and hosted by Sir Lindsay Hoyle and the House of Commons staff. On Tuesday of the conference, we were invited to sit in and observe the Prime Minister's questions at Westminster, and that was quite engaging to at least observe it in person. The sessions were enlightening and relevant to our improvement of practices in our parliamentary democracy. On the Wednesday of that trip, the speakers that were present were invited to a garden party at Buckingham Palace, and the speakers were also granted a private audience with His Majesty the King. During that engagement with His Majesty, I was able to raise with him some of the social concerns as it relates to Anguilla, which I dare say that he was also briefed on in respect of the youth crime and violence situation. Coming out of that, we were able to establish some networks that we would be able to collaborate with on both sides of the House, which we will explore as we progress through this month. The second engagement that Mr. Proctor and I held in the UK was one that left the most impact with us. It was, we captioned it Mentor and Mingle. And if you have social media, you would have seen that we were able to host 23 Anguillan students that journeyed from as far as 5 hours away by bus, and as they say in England, coach and train and tube. But it was such an enlightening experience to see these young adults navigating life in the UK, navigating school. And we had one student in particular, one of our Shevening scholars, that came from as far as Wales. It was a time of fellowship. We had great food, but we also had great conversation as it relates to leadership and governance in Anguilla. And I wish to put on record that those students impressed us. I think Mr. Proctor and I were feeling quite emotional and aged, having observed them growing up and then just seeing them navigate through the UK. We were really, really impressed and heartened. We've already seen a lot of their parents since we came back and was able to report that we saw them, we hugged them, and they're doing well. What I do want to urge upon you, though, is to have sight of their video that they made where they captioned it, Anguilla, we are in this together. They recognized that even though they are miles apart and hadn't given thought about what they would do next with their lives, they felt moved to send a statement home to say, we are in this together. We intend to advocate for peace among our young people. What I do want to do is place on record our deepest gratitude to our leader of opposition and our leader of government business, who sent a joint card of encouragement to our students. That went a long way. They were really pleased when they opened their gift bags and received a heartwarming message. Some of them are going to frame them, but it just goes to say that sometimes it just takes a very simple gesture. It wasn't anything that cost us any money. It was a reassuring message that encouraged them. The final part of our attachment was in the Isle of Man, and we want to thank the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, who has actively been involved in helping us and other OTs to improve our parliamentary democracy. They funded our attachment for 2 days, and we were also able to make meaningful engagement as it relates to projects that we can collaborate on in respect of our parliamentary practice. One of those projects relates to the use of AI technology in terms of our transcriptionist services in the House. And I was able to deliver a keynote address, and I made the joke that we are the birthplace of .ai, and for that reason, we have every right to be ahead of the game as it relates to transcriptionist services coming out of the House. We need to establish precedent. We need the public to see what it is that we do in the House. And the way to see it is to read the transcripts, see us on the website, look at the live streams. And Mr. Proctor and I and Ms. Proctor were able to observe the system that is used just next door in our courthouse, and it's quite an impressive system. So you'll see we have new mics today. For those that arrive late, these aren't hot mics, but the mics don't have the mute button. So this is our tool to start learning that the mics will always be on. Everything you say or whisper will come through the mics. And eventually we're going to have a station where that is transcribed automatically using AI technology to generate a transcript. There's no reason why we need to look at the YouTube video of 3 weeks ago to prepare our response, because we need to know in real time what transpires in the House, and the public needs to know in real time what transpires in the House. So I also want to commend the administration committee, and on that administration committee are members from both sides of the House. We have already met twice since our appointment, and our meetings have been very fruitful in spearheading some of these projects. So I want to thank the members that were there prior and that have come on fresh and are willing to advance these projects. So thank you for your involvement, your contributions to the staff. I also want to place on record, I don't want to embarrass Clerk, Proctor, and Deputy Clerk, but sometimes we pay little attention to what they do. And it was only when I got over to the other side of the Atlantic, I recognized the immense respect that members of parliament in the UK have for our staff, our team. So I do encourage you to continue to support them in whatever way they need support. They are doing a fine job in crunching out the logistics and keeping us on task. So I recognize them as well. Those are my announcements.
Questions? None. Government statements and recent developments. Statement by the Honorable Single Island Wide Electoral District Member, Mr. Kyle Hodge, the Minister of Economic Development.
I have given Minister Kyle Hodge leave to make a brief statement as it relates to recent developments.
Madam Speaker, grateful for the opportunity. Thank you, and good morning to the House. Good morning to the people of Anguilla. Madam Speaker, with your permission, I rise to update this Honorable House on the implementation of the Licensing of Businesses Regulation, shaped through engagement with stakeholders across the Anguillian community. On 31st of December 2021, the Licensing of Businesses Act 2021 came into effect. Under Section 19, the Minister of Commerce is empowered with the approval of Executive Council to issue ministerial orders prohibiting the issuance of licenses in specific industries for defined periods. With Executive Council's approval, I made the Licensing of Businesses, Moratorium and Supermarkets and Hardware Stores Order 2025, which came into force on 15th May 2025. 2025. This order prohibits the issuance of new business licenses for supermarkets and hardware stores for a period of 3 years. It does not apply to renewals of existing businesses in these sectors. In making this order, I considered the number of active licenses already issued, 44 supermarkets and 15 hardware stores. Based on Anguilla's population and consumer needs, this is more than sufficient. This renewed moratorium, following an intentional lapse by the previous administration, is designed to prevent further oversaturation of these retail sectors and to promote responsible economic planning. This administration remains committed to fostering a balanced and sustainable business environment for all, one that protects both businesses and consumers from oversaturation, given our small population size of just around 15,000 people. This moratorium is one of the tools we will continue to use in pursuit of that goal. Madam Speaker, I commend the statement to the Honorable House. Thank you.
Thank you, Member. So with respect to the statement made by the Honorable Member Hodge, are there any questions or queries or comments in respect of the statement that any member would wish to raise? If there are none, Mr. Clark?
Papers,
At this,
terms of reference of the administration committee.
yes, members, you would have heard me commend the administration committee this morning for the hard work that they've already started to make. And one of the areas that we wanted to improve was to set out terms of reference in respect of how we operate. And I've given leave to one of our senior members of the committee, not the senior, but one of the senior members, to present our draft terms of reference. So I recognize the honorable member from Road North.
Madam Speaker, I would like to lay on the table the terms of reference for the Administration Committee. The terms of reference has been agreed by the committee to guide the work and operations of the committee. The terms are a work in progress, and it is the intention of the committee to move the inclusion of the terms into the standing orders after a period of review. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, member. So ordered. The terms of reference shall lay until such time that they are revised.
Reports from committees, none. Petitions, none. Government notices, none. Private members' notices, none. Motions, motion 1 of 2025, 1/13, HOA, consideration of government's legislative program.
Pursuant to the standing orders, you will recall that the opening address was made at our previous sitting on the 22nd of April, 2025. And further in consideration of our standing orders, I invite the honorable member for Island Harbor to reply to the motion 1 of 2025.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning, Madam Speaker. Good morning to the members of the House, the clerk, staff, persons in the gallery, those listening or watching here in Anguilla and overseas. The last House of Assembly was held on Tuesday, the 22nd of April, 2025. The opening remarks were made and the legislative agenda was presented by the member from Sandy Hill, the Premier. More than a month has passed since then, and certain incidents that have occurred in Anguilla have required the government and opposition to come together for a common purpose, none more important than to find solutions to the increase in gun crime. Madam Speaker, the opposition, elected and unelected, pledges to continue to work with the government on this and other issues of national importance. However, I am here today as leader of the opposition to respond to the presentation made by the Honorable Premier. Madam Speaker, there were several misleading statements made during the opening remarks. The member from Sandy Hill stated that the new Blowing Point Ferry Terminal was an ongoing project of the Anguilla United Front. That was false. Following the demolition of the Blowing Point Ferry Terminal after Hurricane Irma, there was no money allocated in the AUF's 2020 budget for rebuilding the Blowing Point Ferry Terminal. In fact, they were expecting Global Ports to build the Blowing Point Ferry Terminal and operate it for 30 to 50 years. Remember ASPA DC, the special purpose vehicle, which was deemed unlawful by the United Kingdom government and had to be dissolved. The Anguilla United Front had no plan to move forward with the rebuilding of the Blowing Point Ferry Terminal. It was the member for Road South, as Minister of Infrastructure, who got the Blowing Point Ferry Terminal done. Madam Speaker, I was disappointed to hear regarding the AUF GST relief plan that implementation will be delayed. The people were expecting immediate relief. Since last summer, the Anguilla United Front presented their GST relief plan and campaigned that they were ready to bring relief to the people of Anguilla immediately. The member has now stated that this is not a quick fix. What were they doing while in opposition? Did their consultants and advisors devise and vet the plan before releasing it to the public? Or was this the usual AUF political tactic of presenting a brightly colored manifesto and plans with no intention or ability to implement? During the campaign, the member for Sandy Hill and her team implored the APM administration to implement the AUF GST relief plan immediately. Now the Premier says that she has requested her team in the Ministry of Finance to determine the reduction in revenue and how to move forward with their plan. Madam Speaker, of note, the dedicated public servants in the Ministry of Finance have already dissected the AUF GST relief plan in September of 2024 in the gallery of this very House and show that it is not a workable or sustainable plan. And that is why it is still not implemented. Just the facts, Madam Speaker. This reminds me of the 2015 campaign when the AUF promised removal of the interim stabilization levy on day one. And when they could not do it, the former AUF leader said this was just campaign rhetoric and electioneering. It seems that the people of Anguilla continue to fall for these tactics. The member has also stated that she will engage CARTAC, the Caribbean Regional Technical Assistance Center. But let us not forget that the AUF GST plan that was approved in Executive Council on the 4th of June 2018 was based on the CARTAC report of 2016, where the GST rate was proposed at 17% with limited exemptions. This was enshrined in the 2019 budget. Madam Speaker, the member mentioned reducing electricity costs through ANGLEC's Renewable Energy Integration Plan. Adopting ANGLEC's phased renewable energy plan means that the people of Anguilla will be waiting for a long time to get relief from high energy costs. There will be no electricity subsidies for the people of Anguilla, and the cost of living will continue to rise. In regards to ANGLEC, Madam Speaker, I was disappointed in the heavy-handed moves by the Minister of Infrastructure, Single Island-wide member Jose Vanterpool, regarding the former members of the Board of Directors of ANGLEC. He took them to court, got court injunction to remove them 3 days before the meeting. No will be changed anyway. Who does that? Isn't that reckless spending? This and other actions have been described as vindictive, aggressive, arrogant, and malicious behavior. Madam Speaker, the member from Sandy Hill stated that water is a main priority. We all agree with this. 80% of the water produced is lost due to aging infrastructure. The 2025 budget included $9 million EC dollars for water development. The member stated this is not enough. And of course, we knew that, because the APM administration was in negotiation with the United Kingdom government to fund this essential service, which should be included in the new UK government spending review, which started in April of 2025. And I fully expect that the UK government will fund the water network rehabilitation project. The member stated that the AUF administration will focus on the private sector and local business sector. We are in full support because small businesses are the engine that drive the economy. The government plans to increase employment. The best way to do this is to continue the projects which have already started and those which are budgeted for. Madam Speaker, the member mentioned increased wages. The Anguilla Progressive Movement administration introduced the minimum wage, which elevated salaries for many persons, some of the least paid among us. This policy was under review as of January 2025 to determine the amount of increase and the feasibility of a sectoral minimum wage. The members stated they want to increase economic development. Madam Speaker, multiple MOUs were negotiated and signed by the APM administration, which included commitments to social projects. Several of the social obligations have been completed or ongoing, and the people of Anguilla, especially our children, are benefiting significantly. The AUF administration signed MOAs in the past, which included a clause about contributions to social, education, sports, or cultural projects, were there, but these were never defined or enforced. Speaking of social projects, Madam Speaker, the Premier criticized the Lansing Bowl Cultural Center, which was a social project DOT committed to when they bought the Four Seasons property. DOT committed $5 million to the Lansing Bowl Cultural Center project. The $5 million was never projected to complete the Lansing Bowl Cultural Center as designed, Madam Speaker. It was intended to build the first phase of the LBCC so that Carnival 50, the family reunion, could be held there, and that happened. And we thank the former Minister for Social Development and Education. The agreement with DOT that any money spent over $5 million would be repaid in future GST credits was deemed lawful by the Attorney General and approved in Executive Council. The Premier's recent utterances regarding social projects, including the Blowing Point Sports Complex and the Island Harbor Basketball Facility, suggest that she's of the opinion that government should not accept social contributions from investors and developers. Madam Speaker, where would the school feeding program, Project Inspire, and health services at the Princess Alexandra Hospital be without generous private donations? These donations contribute to human and social development of our people. Anguilla is too many years behind to be playing petty politics. Madam Speaker, regarding food security, the member informed of the 2.4 million EC dollars from the ECCB to enhance agriculture and food security. This funding is the direct result of my advocacy as chairman of the Monetary Council of the ECCU, where 25 million EC dollars was committed to agriculture and food security so that we could meet the initiative of CARICOM and the OECS of a reduction in food imports by 25% by 2025. Anguilla United Front has a habit of taking credit for the good and not the bad, even if the bad is a result of their policies and actions, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the member stated that the former Health Authority of Anguilla employees' salaries were not in alignment. I don't understand what she means by that. The former Health Authority employees' salaries were personal to Holder, which in many cases are higher than their public service counterparts. The comprehensive salary review will allow salaries to be based on job descriptions, technical advice, and cost of living. This will lead to salary increases. An estimate of salary increases is included in the 2025 budget. I was surprised, Madam Speaker, when the Premier announced recently that the contract with the salary review consultant has not been signed as yet. Madam Speaker, the consultant was chosen since last October. And this is disappointing news, not only for me, because I'm concerned about the salaries of our public servants who are dedicated to taking care of this country and doing the work of the people. This includes the staff at the Department of Health Services who have not received salary increases since 2008. And that is why public servants and staff of statutory bodies were given ex gratia payments in 2023 and 2024. Madam Speaker, regarding the Princess Alexandra Hospital, the upgraded medical facilities, there's an MRI machine, new ambulances, 2 donated by the UK government, and 2 which are ready to be shipped, donated by the government of Bermuda. And I wish to thank the governments and people of the UK and Bermuda for their generous contributions to our emergency services, Madam Speaker. Regarding sports, this is a month later, Madam Speaker, than when the opening remarks were made, but I too would like to congratulate the Caribbean athletes and other athletes who continue to be ambassadors and represent Anguilla well, in spite of inadequate facilities or lack of track and sport facilities. The boys on the 14th football team was outstanding. The success of the Taekwondo team in Philadelphia makes us proud. Our athlete, John L. Hughes' spectacular performance in the 200 meters recently is testament to Anguillan talent and resilience, Madam Speaker. The King's Baton Relay for the Commonwealth Games to be held in Glasgow in 2026 passed through this country, Madam Speaker, and I wish to say congratulations to our adults, members of civil society who participated. I also wish to thank the designers of the Anguilla baton, which represented scenes and themes of Anguilla, Madam Speaker. I was honored to be part of the relay in District 1, and I wish to thank our athletes and wish them success as they travel to Glasgow in 2026. I also wish to congratulate Ms. Vinisi Brooks and her baseball team as they plan to travel in July to represent Anguilla, Madam Speaker. I do hope that the Department of Sports will provide some financial support as our young men go out to represent us. Madam Speaker, the members stated that they are working on a national sports program, which will include a community planner for sports. This is a great idea to channel our youth and keep them engaged. Former Minister Deanne Kentish-Rogers had proposed a national sports development plan, which included an athletic track, an Olympic swimming pool, redevelopment of the James Ronald Webster Park, including construction of the Cricket Players Pavilion using the £150,000 raised in London in May of 2023, redevelopment of Coronation Park, the Blowing Point Sports Facility, and the Island Harbor Basketball Facility. Madam Speaker, the youth of Island Harbor are still waiting for a response from the Minister of Infrastructure to my letter of April 9th, so the community can move ahead with construction of the steel frame building over the basketball court. Where is this administration's commitment to the youth of District 1? Madam Speaker, in terms of tourism numbers are the highest ever. The publication Travel and Tour World, publication April 10, 2025, stated, Anguilla has reported an extraordinary surge in visitor arrivals, attracting more than 24,000 visitors in December 2024 due to new benchmarks and solidifying its position as a premier luxury travel destination. December 2024, tourism numbers were up 24.5% compared to the same date in 2023. And it states these increases are due to Anguilla's enduring appeal and effective marketing strategies. But yet, the Director of Tourism was terminated by this AUF administration because she was not considered to be Anguillan enough. Former Director of Tourism is now highly sought after by regional governments and is a featured speaker at regional and international tourism fora. Now, Speaker, this is how you slow down progress. And all of us have heard the intent is to diversify totally away from tourism. In terms of education, Madam Speaker, the member mentioned early childhood education. And I'd like to state that the Anguilla Progressive Movement Administration increased salaries for early childhood education teachers through the minimum wage and increased subventions. Campus Q. Madam Speaker, we knew there was no budget for the Science Block Package 4A or the TVET Center Package 4B when we came in 2020. But the APM administration lobbied the UK government to fund the Science Block and then used $16 million from GST revenue to get Campus Q fit to open to get students off the split shift system after 7 years and committed $17 million to building the TVET Center. Priorities, Madam Speaker. Priorities matter. Madam Speaker, the Education Task Force made recommendations. And I admonish us that these should be followed since they address the issues of teachers, students, and administrators, and will make for a more modern and effective education system. Madam Speaker, we come to one of the areas that is of most concern at this time in Anguilla: drugs, gun violence, security. We are at a loss for words as these senseless acts of gun violence tear away the fabric of peace and tranquility that once closed us. Our hopes and dreams, our aspirations, our purpose and potential are being buried as we lay our sons of the soil to rest. Madam Speaker, no child and no parent should ever have to find the words to explain the loss of a loved one stolen by gun violence. No matter how you look at it, one life taken affects all of us. We are interrelated, interconnected, and mutually vulnerable. As a leader, I condemn these acts of violence. As an Anguillian, I'm overcome by the pain and sorrow of those who mourn. To the families of the victims, my thoughts and prayers are with you. There are countless ways for us to curb these careless crimes, Madam Speaker. We must put politics aside. We must support our youth so that we endeavor to find solutions to their concerns and support our law enforcement agencies. We know that the Royal Anguilla Police Force is doing its part to bring the perpetrators of these crimes to justice and to rid our communities of guns and violence. I'm calling on all parents and guardians. If you suspect your child is exposed to or involved in violence, speak with an officer you trust to get them help. And where there are guns or other dangerous items, notify the police so they can be removed. I'm calling on our youth, especially our young men, to join us on this quest for understanding, reconciliation, and peace. And Madam Speaker, we must continue to implement the recommendations of the Gun Crime and Violence Committee, including nationwide closed-circuit TV cameras. These have been budgeted for. Must have community policing, community mental health and psychosocial support, in community centers with work plans to engage our youth, especially our young men. All of society, including government, opposition, schools, churches, civic organizations, and sports groups must engage our youth to provide education, activities, opportunities, and alternatives. The government, the opposition, the governor's office, and the United Kingdom government are united in this cause, Madam Speaker. Town halls in the different districts with participation by government and opposition have been very informative, and joint statements from the government and opposition show the commitment of our elected leaders to this cause. But all of society must be involved to find solutions. Madam Speaker, during the opening remarks, the leader of government business stated, promises made, promises kept. I don't know what these promises were that she was referring to, but if she was referring to implementation of the goods and service tax, they did that. If she's referring to the banking resolution and the current problems, such as omitting the foreign depositors, they did that. We all know that the AUF administration did not implement even one of the promises in their 15-point plan in their manifesto 2015 to 2020 and beyond. But Madam Speaker, I'd like to quote Super Mario regarding the APM administration. And I quote, "They promised improved healthcare systems and they delivered. MRI, Senior Shield, dialysis unit, Valley Main Road, Airport Road, new ferryboat terminal, school lunch program, minimum wage, understudy program, fisheries and agriculture, they delivered those too. APM, you have gone beyond what Anguilla expect. The people you have never neglect. Promises made, promises kept. Madam Speaker, the legislative agenda presented by the Leader of Government Business, the member for Sandy Hill, is similar to the APM legislative agenda presented in November of 2024, just with reshuffled priorities. And I don't know if the bills are listed in order of priority. If this is the case, then I would have expected the Consumer Protection Bill, the Festivals Commission Bill, and the Labor Relations Amendment Bill to be higher on the list. Consumer Protection Bill was meant not only to address price control, to reduce the cost of essential food and essential goods, but also to ensure good quality of food and goods, including regulation of expired and defective items. Now, I have heard a Minister of Government state that there will be a published list of prices of food items at each supermarket so that consumers can choose where to shop. I think this will be confusing and inefficient because shoppers will have to drive from store to store to get the lowest price on different items. Setting the maximum price of essential food items, as is done with gas, would work better. This requires the Consumer Protection Act, which is at the AG chambers. The member did mention forming a festivals commission, but I see this further down on the list. I hope that this does not reflect the level of importance given to this need. Amendment to the Labor Relations Act is listed, and it is good to see that some of the deficiencies highlighted by former Minister Kenneth Hodge will be addressed. Madam Speaker, I'm happy to see the amendment to the bulk petroleum levy legislation is high on the list. The bulk petroleum levy was listed in the medium-term economic and fiscal plan since 2016 as a source of revenue to raise $1.5 million. Given the lack of tourism revenue in 2020 due to COVID, it was necessary to implement the bulk petroleum levy on the fuel suppliers. But given Anguilla's improved fiscal position in 2024, the Anguilla Progressive Movement administration decided to decrease the bulk petroleum levy, which is included in the medium-term economic and fiscal plan 2025 to 2027. This allowed the former Minister for Agriculture and Fishing to negotiate for lower fuel prices for our fishers. Madam Speaker, this is progress. Madam Speaker, in reviewing the legislative agenda, a few of the proposed bills caught my attention, and it would have been good for the member to give a short overview of what these will address. The GST Amendment Act. Will this address the AUF GST relief plan, or will this propose to increase the GST rate and/or remove some of the exemptions to increase revenue? I have heard that there's a proposal to charge GST on service charge. The Pensions Amendment Act. Will this include private sector pensions, as was the plan of the former Minister of Home Affairs? The Social Security Act. I heard that the member for Sand Hill was critical of the APM administration for not imposing all of the recommendations of the actuary. I am wondering, therefore, if the AUF will increase the starting age to receive Social Security payments from 65 years to 67 years or beyond, as recommended by the actuary. The APM rejected that recommendation. Madam Speaker, the Universal Social Levy Amendment Act. The USL replaced the ISL, which the AUF said they would remove on day one in 2015. Has day one finally arrived? Or will the AUF convert the revenue from the USL to a national health insurance fund as planned by the former AUM and APM administrations? We will wait and see. Madam Speaker, the member has stated that the AUF will continue the Senior Shield and Junior Shield programs, which provide free health care for Anguillians 70 years and older and children under the age of 6. Since they complained that these programs were not enshrined in legislation, I would have expected to see bills pertaining to these programs, unless they will be covered in the listed National Health Insurance Amendment Act, which was the intention of the APM administration, Madam Speaker. It is good to see that the Health Professions Act to regulate the licensing, discipline, and continuing education of health professionals and the Tobacco Act to ban tobacco use in most public places will be progressed. I see listed the immigration reform legislation and regulations, which I hope will address the initiative by former Minister Kenneth Hodge to decrease the number of years required for permanent residence, especially for Caribbean nationals and those who show a commitment to Anguilla. Madam Speaker, of significant concern is the Banking Amendment Act. Will this amendment give the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank more options to prevent the unilateral decisions by banks to disenfranchise their customers when the bank's error is obvious? Or will this amendment give the ECCB further immunity so that any court decisions regarding the 2016 banking resolution are borne solely by the government of Anguilla and thus the people of Anguilla? Overseas depositors, some of whom are Anguillians with overseas addresses, are awaiting the day in court as mandated by the recent Privy Council decision. And speaking of the Privy Council, Madam Speaker, on Thursday, the 22nd of May, in a radio interview with DJ Abner Hammer Brooks on Class FM, the Premier agreed with DJ Hammer that the case ABC Supplies versus the government of Anguilla went to the Privy Council, and the Privy Council ruled that money should be paid to ABC Supplies for IGT credits. Madam Speaker, I'd like to give the Premier the benefit of the doubt that she did not mean to mislead the people of Anguilla. Maybe she was tired after several nights of town halls. But I can assure the people of Anguilla, Madam Speaker, that there was no ruling that ABC Supply should be paid over $500,000 in IGT credits unless they could show that there was reasonable effort on their part to pass on reduced costs to consumers. And they, Madam Speaker, in letters from themselves, would have stated that they did not do that. Premier can clear this up in her response. Madam Speaker, I was expecting to see legislation for cleansing of the voters list and a new enumeration. This is the recommendation of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, British Islands and Mediterranean Region, CPA BIMR Election Expert Mission 2020, and Her Excellency the Governor, whose responsibilities include elections. Madam Speaker, the right to vote in Anguilla is set out in Article 45 of the Anguilla Constitution. And this states that the right to vote is contingent upon being registered to vote. Article 43, subsection 1 states that it is required to be resident in the electoral district of registration. The High Court in 2020 delivered guidance as how to establish residence. Residence was defined to mean that the person must have a permanent and settled presence in the electoral district. The person must be physically resident in that district as opposed to having some transient purpose there. And this would suggest that the person must sleep in the electoral district to be registered to vote. Page 10 of the same report, the CPA BIMR Election Expert Mission Final Report 2020 recommended that given the high number, 40% of persons on the voter list that reside overseas, there's need to conduct a nationwide enumeration of voters, followed by the compilation of new voter lists for each electoral district. Madam Speaker, the census report, which will be available, completed January 31 of 2024, showed that about 14,300 persons live in Anguilla. The Supervisor of Elections report following the elections of February 2025 shows that there are over 12,500 persons registered on the voters list in Anguilla. That is incongruent with fair elections, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the CPA BIMR Election Observer Mission Final Report 2015 noted similar concerns and recommendations as the CPA BIMR Election Expert Mission Final Report of 2020. Her Excellency the Governor, in an interview with Keith Stonegraves on Radio Anguilla, stated regarding her powers pertaining to elections that everything is in the Constitution. She stated that she is utterly guided by what the Constitution says, and the ultimate interpreter of what the Constitution means is the courts. The High Court ruled in 2020, Madam Speaker. The Governor also stated in a written press release dated 29 April 2024, as Governor, I have a responsibility to uphold good governance and that includes free and fair elections in Anguilla. Anguilla's constitution sets out the right to vote is dependent on being registered to vote, and to be registered, an individual must be resident in the electoral district of registration. In 2020, the High Court of Anguilla clarified that to be resident, a person must have a permanent and settled presence in that electoral district, meaning a physical presence, not just a transient purpose. End of quote. The governor went on to state in that same press release that questions about the integrity of the voter register can't be ignored. Madam Speaker, it is incumbent on the administering power to uphold the Constitution of Anguilla, and that responsibility falls to our extension to the government. But it is the duty of the government, elected by the people, to follow the Constitution, the supreme law of Anguilla. Therefore, an urgent enumeration and a new voters list of registered voters is essential for good governance, integrity of the electoral process, and fair elections in Anguilla. Any delay will defy the Constitution and disenfranchise Anguillians who live in Anguilla. I'd like to thank the member for Sandhill for outlining the hard work of the ministries, which is an endorsement for the performance the Anguilla Progressive Movement, the performance of the Anguilla Progressive Movement administration for the past 5 years. I too would like to thank the public servants, especially those in the Ministry of Finance, past and present, for their hard work and dedicated service during the tenure of our administration. I am hopeful that paying their deferred salaries, reversing the pay cuts of 2009 and 2010, providing ex gratia payments in December 23 and 2024, and our commitment to well-deserved salary increases through the comprehensive salary and cost of living review are indicative of our gratitude for their service. I'd like to thank the AG chambers, especially the drafters, who turn policies into legislation and are always ready to produce bills and regulations, sometimes on an emergency basis. Madam Speaker, I wish to thank you, the members, the clerk and staff, the gallery, and Anguillians here and abroad for your patience and attention. I look forward to a year of collaboration with the government when possible, and holding them to account when necessary. Madam Speaker, with your leave, I'll take the liberty to wish all Anguillians a happy and safe Anguilla Day 2025, and pray that all the goals and aspirations of the Anguilla Revolution are realized in the near future. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless Anguilla. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. Your reply. Pursuant to Standing Order 13, subsection 4, I invite the Premier to respond to the Leader of Opposition's reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning to you. Good morning to the members of this honorable House, to the listening and viewing public. Madam Speaker, I rise pursuant to paragraph 13(4) of the House of Assembly Procedure Rules 2021, where the Speaker shall invite the Premier to respond to the Leader of the Opposition's reply before closing. Madam Speaker, as I listened to the Leader of the Opposition speak, two things occurred to me. One, it appears that the Leader of the Opposition does not realize that elections took place on February 26, 2025, and that it also appears that the Leader of the Opposition does not remember that he sat as Premier for 5 years between 2020 and 2025. And I'll tell you why I say so, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the response from the Leader of the Opposition unfortunately appeared to be a campaign speech, where he went into detail speaking about his version of what took place for the last 5 years. And let me start by speaking first about the GST relief. The member for Island Harbor is given the impression, and knowing that as a minister of finance, the member would understand that in implementing any program that has financial implications, there has to be research, there has to be data, and there has to be an assessment as the potential loss of revenue when putting forward a plan. In 2024, when the Anguilla United Front was in opposition, the GST relief plan that was proposed to the government of the day. And the purpose of proposing it to the government of the day was to say, look, we provided an outline. This is what we think, that these 4 sectors should be removed from GST. And the reason why we were proposing that those 4 sectors, wholesale, retail, manufacturing, and the restaurants, was because we saw and we understood that since 2022, when the GST was implemented and the form in which it was implemented was causing harm to the people of Anguilla. While we were in opposition, we put forward a plan and we said, look, take a look at this. You can run it through whatever data, whatever information you have, but we think that this is going to help the people of Anguilla. And at the time that we made that proposal, Madam Speaker, we understood and we saw that GST was overperforming. And at the end of 2023, it was anticipated that GST would bring in $90 million, but it brought in $155 million. $65 million more than was
Premier, I
budgeted.
just want to make, I'm sorry, crave your indulgence. I think the honorable member from Road South wasn't here when I announced about the mics. I just want to remind you that the microphones aren't muted and it's being transmitted through the live feed. Okay, just be guided accordingly. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And in the face of the GST overperforming, the Anguilla United Front, then in opposition, thought it was necessary to look out for the people of Anguilla, since the then administration appeared not to. And that was the basis on which we put forward that plan. Now, the member for Island Harbor says that the technocrats looked at it and said it could not work. But as we are sitting in office and we put forward a proposal, we are in the process of obtaining the technical expertise to come in and to assist us, not to tell us whether or not it could be implemented, but to provide the assistance for the implementation of it, which means that they will be working with Inland Revenue and Customs in particular to ensure that the plan is done in a way in which it is not only seamless, but also effective to be able to ultimately provide the relief to the people of Anguilla that we anticipate it will provide. And Madam Speaker, as I know that everyone's parents, grandparents would say, anything worth doing is worth doing correctly. It's worth doing right. And so I say that in the context of the previous administration having been in office, having received the Anguilla United Front Relief Plan, having dismissed it and said it could not work, it was ridiculous. In December of 2024, 2 months before the general elections, the APM administration took a portion of the plan, which was to remove GST from food, as opposed to removing GST from the retail from the GST structure, and implemented that particular portion and told the people of Anguilla that this would bring relief to them. Today, as we visit the grocery stores, as we shop, because we all have to eat, we all shop in the stores, the people of Anguilla are saying that they have not seen a significant decrease in the reduction of the food, a significant decrease in the cost of food in the grocery stores. And the reason for that is because it was a quick fix. It was something to jump up and say, we did this, look, we're looking out for you, now vote for us. But instead, we can see today that there is a need for the type of reform that we are bringing forward. And it will be done. And so the member for Island Harbor is criticizing, oh, we thought it would be done by now. But they had 6 months after it was given to them. And in December of 2024, they brought only one portion of it. But we're going to do it right. We're doing it properly, and we are implementing the Anguilla United Front GST relief plan in a way that will bring affordability back to Anguilla. The previous administration would have criticized and would have said that people are lying when Anguillians are going to St. Martin and buying food and bringing them back in suitcases. Say it's not true. Say that that's always what's been done. But the people know. The people know, and the grocery stores locally will tell you that the people are not shopping in the way that they used to. But they will also tell you that it is difficult to decrease the prices because the cost of food from purchase, when they're importing from the US in particular, the cost of shipping, and then the added cost of GST onto all of those prices have not only increased the cost of food, but has also created a situation where the shopkeepers are paying out of pocket. And as a result, our shopkeepers are suffering. Why? Because it takes a while. Yes, you can get a claim back, etc., but that structure is complicated and is onerous and it's difficult because now the shopkeepers have to pay out of pocket upfront and then recoup the monies after. So, Madam Speaker, in relation to the GST relief, I would have indicated on previous programs that we are working on ensuring that it's implemented in an appropriate way, and we will continue to do so. And so while the member for Island Harbor can stand today and pontificate, at the end of the day, the results will speak for itself. Under the previous administration, and in the 2023 budget, it clearly stated that the GST implementation would have resulted in increased inflation. It said so clearly. And the increased inflation corresponded to the increased cost of living. So while the member for Island Harbor seeks to take credit for all manner of things that they did, and I'll be honest, there are some things that they did correctly, and we say kudos to the administration. Just like every administration before the APM have done things correctly. But when the APM stands and tries to suggest that they were looking out for the people of Anguilla, it is clear that they were not. And the people understood that. And that is why in the House today, the Anguilla United Front is on this side of the House, and the APM is on that side of the House. And Madam Speaker, the measures that this government is taking, because we campaigned on the people plan, and we campaigned on ensuring that the people would be looked out for as a priority. And the increased cost of living, the increased inflation that was caused by the previous administration and ignored by them until the heels of elections is what we are actively working on to roll back so that people can continue to keep monies in their pocket, can continue to take care of their children, can continue to provide for their families. That is why we are where we are today. And I want to touch on the voters' election, the Elections Act. And the member for Island Harbor took some time to talk about the elections report from 2020. And Madam Speaker, that's why I say that I wonder whether the Premier, the former Premier, sitting as Premier, would have remembered that he sat during that period of time. Because the report that's being referred to was a 2020 report. We are in 2025. So what happened during the 5 years that he sat as leader of government business, that he had the ability, the authority, and he knew that he could have put in place a process to provide for the enumeration, to provide for a proper structure that would involve the Electoral Boundaries Commission being set up, the exercise done to ensure that the districts, because this was provided for in the report, that all of the districts were of roughly equivalent size, which may mean dividing 2 of those districts. Where was the work that was done? Absent. During the 5 years, no work whatsoever was done by the previous administration in relation to the Boundaries Commission, in relation to the enumeration, in relation to the voters list, in relation to the elections report. 5 years. And now the member sits in opposition and is speaking as if he was never there and charging this administration with the responsibility of carrying something that he sat through for 5 years. Not even a constitutional amendment. Nothing. And so, Madam Speaker, when we are speaking, we have to remember where we came from. We have to remember the work that we did or we did not do. And I want to touch base on the Lansing Bowl Cultural Center. And as I have always said, we thank the donor, God, for the contribution, the social contribution that they made. And to the credit of the member for Island Harbor, he will have acknowledged that there were MOUs that would have had a social component in it before. And previous administrations did utilize portions, but it wasn't done in a systematic way. And for that, I will recognize the efforts of the previous administration. But, Madam Speaker, as I always say, governments are continuous. And that is why the former administration could have come into office, seen these MOUs already prepared, see the social contribution aspect already there, which means it wasn't their idea. But it gave them the opportunity to be able to build on the foundation that was laid, that they met when they got in. So what did they do? They would have had their discussions, etc., and they would have communicated with various developers in terms of moving forward on specific projects. Lansing Bowl Cultural Center was one of them. The questions arose for a number of reasons. Reason number one, monies were invested by the developer into Lansing Bowl prior to an MOU being entered into between the developer and the government of Anguilla. Highly unusual. Not the ordinary mode of operation. And in fact, the MOU was signed and it was publicized. It was signed after commencement of the work on Lansing Bowl. But I want to say that any developer coming into Anguilla understands that they will have to work across administrations. And for the most part, developers try not to get involved in the political aspect. Why? Because if and when, as is that happened on this occasion, governments change, they have to continue to work with whichever administration is in. They've brought investment to the country. They've hired people. They are now local. And so they have an interest in remaining in Anguilla and helping to develop Anguilla. And any elected member, any person sitting in this House of Assembly ought to understand that. And so the mode in which a project takes place is not as a result of developers' actions, but the way in which the government of the day has set out how the action should take place. And let me say why I say that. Once monies, contributions are given, there are one or two ways in which it can be done. It can be done outside of the government structure, meaning it doesn't go through the government coffers, or it could be done within the government structure, meaning that the developer would fund monies towards a particular project, or fund monies through that goes into the consolidated fund. Now, the issue that occurred in this case was not that the funds were donated, because that is greatly appreciated, but it is the lack of transparency that took place in the structure that was or was not set up by the previous administration. And that is why in the House of Assembly, the opposition at the time, and me sitting as leader of the opposition, would have raised the questions as to how the funds were being utilized. How much money? Because at that time, we weren't even being told how much exactly. At one point, it was 4.5, then it was 5, then it was some other figure. There was no information that was forthcoming to the people of Anguilla. But what one of the members who are now sitting in the House said, in the House of Assembly, sitting on this side of the House, that the monies are completely being donated to build Lansing Bowl. No money is coming from the government of Anguilla. The money is coming from the developer, and Lansing Bowl will be built in time for Carnival 50. No money is coming. And so fast forward a few months later to December of 2024, when the budget had been placed in the House. And during the debate, questions were raised as to why there was a line item for Lansing Bowl Cultural Center in the budget for the first time with a figure of $1. The people of Anguilla will remember that the opposition was criticized for questioning. If you said that Lansing Bowl was to be built entirely by a developer, why is it there's a line item budget for Lansing Bowl? So when the member for Island Harbor stands up on his feet and he speaks and he gives the impression that that was not what was said, the people of Anguilla know. And as you mentioned earlier, Madam Speaker, we only have to go back to the tapes to find the day and to listen to the members speak and say exactly what they said. They represented to the public that the funds would go to the Lansing Bowl, and Lansing Bowl would be built by the developer. There was nothing at that time about a portion of it being built by the developer and the other portion coming from the government of Anguilla. No, those were not representations made to the people of Anguilla. So where we are today, and because governments are continuous, is that this administration is now faced with a situation where the MOU provides that, sorry, let me clarify, the supplementary budget in June, July, not the December budget, would have provided for the additional revenue increase for Lansing Bowl. But where we are today is we have a project that we want completed. We have a project that the people want to see completed. Why? Because it is a social element that is necessary in Anguilla. Lansing Bowl has been around for a long time. Lansing Bowl was damaged by the hurricane, and so we value the input that was made by the developer to get Lansing Bowl renovated. But the process is questioned, and the process of the previous administration, because today we now have reports coming. We now have technocrats speaking, and persons are expressing concern. The public is asking questions. Why? Why has this matter not been laid to rest? because there has been no transparency in the process. There's been no transparency. And so today we are facing a situation where anything in excess of $5 million per the MOU is to be given back to the developer in some way, shape, or form. And that was an agreement that was signed by the previous administration. So we come into office and we find that there are a number of issues around this situation. Who do you ask? Because when you ask the technocrats, they say that they were excluded from the process, they weren't involved, they removed themselves, they resigned, they received lawyer letters, all sorts of things took place. And not on the developer's end, but on the government end. So who is supposed to inquire? And who is supposed to ask the question as to whether or not things done, the process was done appropriately? What are the lessons learned? Because when this administration now takes up this issue, how are we going to finish the project? Because in some way, shape, or form, the government of Anguilla now has to recognize the additional revenue, the additional monies that the developer has spent on this project that was not anticipated at the time. That is what we are facing. When you talk about the Blowing Point Sports Complex, what we discovered was that there was a donor. Yes, that was mentioned by the member for District 6 during the last administration. He said that there was a developer, and that developer was going to build the Blowing Point Sports Complex. What is the status today? And the important thing I want the people to understand that the reasons why these issues have not faded is because the land on which these projects are built are owned by government. They're owned by the government of Anguilla. And so the situation that you have is that if the government, the non-government, doesn't complete these projects, we will be faced with white elephants, incomplete projects, because the monies used have not been enough to complete the projects as was claimed by the former administration. So the reports that we have received suggest that the roof for the Lansom, for the Blowing Point Sports Complex is lower than anticipated. And as a result, it cannot be used as was intended. The project is unfinished. The monies apparently have been utilized. And again, another project that did not go through the government coffers. So there's no accountability. And I have to, at this point, give credit to the member for Island Harbor, because he too received donated funds for the construction of the additional rooms at Vivian Vanderpool Primary School. There's been no questions in relation to that. Why? Because the process was done properly. The contractors have been there. The government officials, the technocrats are involved. And so because of that, you can see that there's a knowledge as to what is supposed to be done right, as was done with Vivian Vanderpool Primary School, and what is not done right with the other projects that are incomplete. Case in point, the Island Harbor basketball court. And the member for Island Harbor would have said that the children of District 1 are waiting for the completion of this. Again, Madam Speaker, just in case the public does not realize, this project, the location of it is on government land. Government land. So it means that it's under the purview of the city government to ensure that whatever is developed there is developed appropriately. So if the government has received complaints that the existing location of the basketball court is sinking, that every time there's rain, because it's built in a pond, it floods, and that it is not an appropriate location to put a steel frame building and to further compound the situation. But the member for Island Harbor makes no mention of any of this. These are the issues that once you involve the technocrats, the experts, the engineers, they will tell you But was there any consultation? I don't know. The people of District 1 will have to know whether or not there was a consultation as to whether that was the appropriate location, or whether it is that the installation or the erection of a steel frame building is compounding an existing situation. The district will have to say. And so, Madam Speaker, the member for Island Harbor spoke about food security and the monies for food security that was mentioned, the 2.4 million that came to the government was as a result of his advocating for those monies as he sat as a member of the ECCB and as chair of the Monetary Council. So I'm surprised, Madam Speaker, that towards the end of his presentation, his response, the member for Island Harbor is asking about the Banking Amendment Act. Because the Banking Amendment Act is part and parcel of the work that was done while the member for Island Harbor sat as chair of the Monetary Council and while he sat as a member of the ECCB. So instead of asking questions as to what the purpose of this Banking Amendment Act is, I would have expected that the member would have volunteered the information and informed the public as to what the contents of that Banking Amendment Act would provide. Why? Because he sat for 5 years as Minister of Finance and that he has intimate knowledge, more so than any other member sitting in this House, as to what that Banking Amendment Act is in relation to. Madam Speaker, I want to touch on the salary review. And I know the member for Island Harbor is aware that the civil servant salary review is not a function of the sitting government, just like it wasn't a function of his government, but it is a function of coming through the governor's office and by extension, the deputy governor. And what we have been informed since we took office is that the expectation was that the contract to commence the salary review will have taken place from last year. And it was anticipated to take 6 months, some 6 months to complete, which is why the public servants were told that by June of this year that they would receive it. On taking office and the questions being raised, we would have approached the deputy governor, who would have advised that there have been delays. And in fact, he issued a notice to the public servants explaining the delay and the fact that it has not been signed, but they're expecting that it would be signed. I'm happy to report that the consultants who have been engaged were signed, their contract was signed last week, and they would have started to commence work. And so the exercise should be completed, hopefully, within 6 months. But, Madam Speaker, the member for Island Harbor spoke about the civil servants being given ex gratia payments, etc., because they knew, the previous administration knew and understood the fact that they had not received a salary increase since 2008, and that is correct. But what the member for Island Harbor neglected to also explain is that while it is that they would have implemented a minimum wage, and while it is that they would have given ex gratia payments, the cost of living and inflation had risen during their term of office. And as a result, and they knew, the APM administration knew the impact it was having on the people of Anguilla. But instead of adjusting the GST structure, instead of embarking on true GST reform, because it did little things here and there, but ultimately it has not resulted in anything significant to help the people of Anguilla. But instead of embarking on those exercises, they gave ANLEC credits, gave vouchers to the elderly, and they gave ex gratia payments at the end of every year to the civil servants. And the people of Anguilla were happy And we, as members of the opposition, are happy for it because at least it gave the people a little bit of ease. But it's not the ease that the people of Anguilla wanted and needed. Because if you knew that cost of living had increased under your term as a result of your decisions, then you ought to have done something real. Not just give electricity credits for 3-4 months, 5-6 months at the most. But you should have gone back and revisited the structure and said, look, something is wrong. If we anticipated this amount and it's bringing the yield in this much more, somebody is suffering some way. That was not done. So let us, when we're speaking, when we're talking, let's be frank, let's be honest, let's be clear, and let's be transparent to the people of Anguilla so that they know exactly what the situation is. Madam Speaker, I am happy that the member would have identified that the legislative priorities are some of the priorities that existed before. And it is true. In fact, a lot of legislation that was anticipated to have been prepared had not been prepared, but they're needed. So, for instance, the Labor Relations Act. And as I've always said, laws are living documents. They're meant to be changed from time to time, depending on the circumstances. And so the Labor Relations Act is one of those acts that would have undergone one of the greatest reforms since the Fair Labor Standards Act had been implemented many, many years ago. And there are amendments that are to come in relation to that, because there are some things that need to be done. There's the Immigration Amendment Act. There's some work that needs to be done in relation to immigration. The list that was provided, Madam Speaker, is not only not exhaustive, but it's also not in order of priority. And so to answer the member's question, just because the item appears lower down on the list does not mean that it has a lesser priority than some of the other acts that are there. So the work will continue, Madam Speaker. As we all know, there is a challenge in terms of the Attorney General's chambers being able to meet the demand that is required from all of the ministries. But it's being worked on. I'm confident that, and let me say this, that the Attorney General's chambers have within its chambers a number of hardworking individuals, the legal drafters, the attorneys that go to court, the town councils, civil and criminal, they work. And so the legislative agenda was prepared. We have identified the important areas coming out of the different ministries. But we also understand, and I said so when I first presented in the House, that we understand that because of the limitations that currently exist in the AG's chambers, that we may not be able to accomplish everything that's set out in the legislative agenda. And even that we may have to review. And as we review, then those review the other important legislation that may come forward. So for instance, coming out of the town hall discussions, there is a prevailing view by members of the public that we need to review the Firearms Act and the Bails Act and to create stiffer penalties. So something like that, for instance, if it is the people of Anguilla decide that that's the direction they will then climb to the top of the list. And so I want to say, Madam Speaker, that despite the comments that both the member for Island Harbor and I have made this morning in terms of recognizing issues that exist between us and between the administrations, the difference in perspective. At the end of the day, we are united in relation to the issue of gun. And I want to place on record my thanks and appreciation to the member for Island Harbor, for the APM administration, and the members who have come out in support of the town hall meetings, and we have spoken. And we started in West End, and in West End, Mr. Jamie Hodge and Ms. Gleneva Hodge would have presented on the panel as part of the head table. In Island Harbor, the honorable leader of opposition, member for District 1, would have presented as well, along with former leader of the opposition, member of the House, Ms. Pamela Van Webster, in Island Harbor. In District 2, Mr. Lennox Vanterpool and Mr. Jerome Roberts were presented at the head table. In District 5, we would have had Honorable Merrick Richardson, who was seated at the head table and made presentations. And the only district that was unable to attend would have been District 4, with the former member for Road North, Miss Deanne Kentish Rogers would not have been able to attend and make presentations, but every other constituency would have had representations from the opposition. I want to thank them because it is important that while it is that we may disagree on issues, that it is important that we agree on the things that are important for the people of Anguilla, that is critical for us to be able to move forward. And we, Madam Speaker, I don't want to go too far over, but I just want to say that we are in a place and time where it is necessary, that there are times when unity is important. And as we head into Anguilla Day, as we talk about the unity that we see across the island, we see the festivities and everyone is displaying the national pride. I'm so proud to see it. I'm so happy to see it. And there is, coming out of the town hall meetings, there is a feeling and a desire for our communities to want to take back their communities, take it into their hands. I was very impressed with North Hill, where at least two of the persons stood up and said, what can we do as a community? Not asking us, asking themselves to come together, to put things in place, to reach out to the young people, man. And so I want to take this opportunity as I close on my presentation to say to the people of Anguilla that we have work to do, but I am convinced that we will succeed. We are a small country, we're a small community, 15,000 people, if that, Madam Speaker. We all know each other. We're all related across the districts, and any one of us can point to members. Even if we live in East End, we have family in West End. We have family in Blowing Point, in the Valley, all over. We are one. And so it is time that we take back our country. It is time that we take care of our children. We look at what they're doing. We look at where they are, and we come together for the sake of our future, for our children, our great-grandchildren, our great-great-grandchildren. And so, Madam Speaker, at this point I will end, but I would request to make a personal statement on Anguilla Day as we wrap up. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, member.
Personal explanations, none. Other business, private members' bills, none. Private bills, none. Other orders of the day, statement on the surge in violence, and will.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. You would have heard both sides, both leaders refer to the joint statement that was issued on behalf of the House of Assembly on the 20th of May, 2025. I do think it's only fit that that statement be read into the record. So I would invite a member on either side to volunteer to present the statement as part of the record of these proceedings today. I recognize the honorable member for Sandy Hill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the House of Assembly, you, Madam Speaker, the clerk, for assisting us in preparing this joint statement to be distributed in a timely fashion on behalf of the members of the House of Assembly. And I will now read the contents of the letter. 28th May 2025, House of Assembly statement on surge in gun violence in Anguilla. Anguilla, our home, has been confronted by an increase in gun violence over the past few years. These acts of violence have left us and visitors to our shores with a deep sense of sadness, loss, and insecurity. This is not the Anguilla we know, and this is not the Anguilla to which we aspire. We are all hurting. To those of us directly affected, the Anguilla House of Assembly extends our sincerest and heartfelt condolences, as well as our commitment to work as a unified House of Assembly, the House, in prioritizing and progressing any actions that require our attention. We further commit to the creation of a task force comprised of members of the Assembly, civil society, and law enforcement to support and advise government on, among other things, the implementation of the recommendations of the Select Committee on Gun Violence, and to lead the efforts in the House to devise, develop, and debate legislation to reduce and halt gun violence on any other matters related to the same. This is not solely a government problem, nor is it solely an opposition or even a United Kingdom government problem. This is not solely a young people, family, or a civil society problem. This is an Anguillian problem. Together, with hearts and souls, we must and we can rebuild our nation. We echo the powerful refrain of our students in the United Kingdom. Anguilla, we are in this together. Signed by Honorable Cora Richardson Hodge, Leader of Government, House of Assembly, and the Honorable Dr. Ellis Lorenzo Webster, Leader of the Opposition, House of Assembly. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member. I do invite the Honorable Leader of Opposition to make any comments in respect to the statement if he so desires.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thanks to the Leader of Government Business, Honorable Cora Richardson Hodge. Madam Speaker, this initiative is born out of the united purpose that we have to see this scourge of gun violence decrease in Anguilla. And this way we want to let the people of Anguilla know, and our administering power, the United Kingdom, people everywhere, that this is something that we are committed to make sure that our young people, that we hear them, we listen to their concerns, that all civic society, the Royal Anguilla Police Force, Governor's Office, that all of us are united in this purpose. And so that is why we put out this statement, and certainly the Anguillians in the UK who came up with the slogan, "We are in this together." We want to thank them and also know that we are here when they need us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Honorable Member. Does any other member wish to speak in relation to the joint statement? You may do so briefly. If not, we can move on to any other orders of the day. Recognize the Honorable Member for Road North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are approaching the celebration of 58th celebration of Anguilla Day. Is looking around, there's only a few persons who are past 58. So this is considered a very, very young house. I'm going to point to the gray-haired ones who are past 58. I am not one of them, Madam Speaker. But 58 years, Madam Speaker. Anguilla is almost a senior citizen now, Madam Speaker. In a few years, if Anguilla was a person, they would be qualifying. So we are getting there. As a country, we're not young and nimble in those terms. We are maturing. Should be maturing. I sometimes question if we are maturing, Madam Speaker. And while my Anguilla Day wishes for everyone to have an enjoyable Anguilla Day, for everyone to go out and enjoy party festivities, and for them to do it in a safe manner. Every year, for Anguilla Day when I am about to speak, I ensure to persons the party, but the party responsibly. We don't want no person driving intoxicated on the road. We don't want no persons getting from being overly intoxicated. So that is important. But this year, Madam Speaker, I have a different message to Anguillians, for all those living in Anguilla, all those living in Anguilla. Because I'm seeing an uncomfortable trend, Madam Speaker, that's happening in Anguilla. And Madam Speaker, let me say this in all seriousness. I think persons have realized by now I am not the troll in the political punches. As a matter of fact, I've even been reported to my wife. So be careful of what I say. But I'm going to say this, Madam Speaker. I'm noticing an uncomfortable trend in Anguilla, Madam Speaker. There's certain things that are supposed to be cultural for all Anguillians. We are becoming politically divided in them. That for me is an uncomfortable. Because in 1967, Madam Speaker, when the revolution was fought, it was fought for all Anguilla, Madam. It wasn't fought for one set of Anguillians, Madam Speaker, because we were all suffering. And Madam Speaker, my plea to all Anguillians is that there are certain topics, there are certain cultural events that are for all Anguillians. Let us not get caught up on what color is there or what color is not. And Anguilla Day is one of those. I am seeing persons, Madam Speaker, because of certain parties are in power, they're not showing up for the church services, they're not showing up for Anguilla Day because their party is not. Madam Speaker, that's a trend that needs to stop. We are all Anguillians. Anguilla Day is for all of us. So tomorrow, on Friday, Madam Speaker, I implore all Anguillians, come out in your sharp Anguillian colors, come out dressed, because it is our day. It is Anguilla Day, not AUF Day, it's not APN Day. It's Anguilla Day, Madam Speaker. So my invitation for all Anguillians is to join us as we celebrate Anguilla Day on the 30th of May, Friday, and come out and enjoy the day with us. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member Richardson. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Valley North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to make sure that we have actually moved to.
I
order
actually
of the
think
day.
that it would be efficient if we fuse both, because I take the lead of Mr. Richardson that you have leave to maybe address the joint statement and to give your Anguilla Day wishes in
Okay.
one go.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would like to wish everyone a safe and happy Anguilla Day when it comes. I had the opportunity to celebrate on Sunday with a number of Anguillians living in the UK diaspora. It was an amazing opportunity to connect with Anguillians, some who have gone for well over 20, 30 years, and others who have just gone for a few months. It was very important for me to be able to engage them, to hear from them, to hear their thoughts on what's happening currently in Anguilla, some of the challenges that they have even as they are in the UK. And I want to thank those individuals who warmly welcomed and embraced me. It was a reminder that irrespective of what differences you may have or which political parties you support, there is a shared level of love and commitment that is important to us as Anguillians. And so I once again want to thank everyone who embraced me, who was very, very happy to engage me and very openly share some of their questions, concerns that they have in relation to Anguilla. So I'm very happy that I was able to represent Anguilla and the government of Anguilla in that space on the weekend. So I want to thank them publicly once again. I also want to express my sincerest condolences to the family of Mr. Frank Gum, well, who is a notable member of the Stony Ground community. Frank has also not just been a revolutionary hero, but he was actually a long-term serving public servant as well. So I wish to once again express that to his family. I also want to express my sincerest condolences to the family of Mr. Pastor Narl Gums as well. He is an individual who has made an indelible mark on our society generally. As we move into Anguilla Day, Madam Speaker, there are a number of family members who continue to mourn the loss of many young members, old persons, and so we are always minded to keep them in our prayers and ask for strength for them during these difficult times, because while there's so much to celebrate for them, there's the loss within their family that we must acknowledge. I share the sentiments of Mr. Richardson in encouraging all Anguillians, wherever you are, whether you're in the diaspora, whether you're here at home, to make sure you take the time and the opportunity to celebrate Anguilla. Because as much as we have many challenges in this country, we must be reminded of how blessed we are. Blessed we are to be able to own our own homes in this country. Blessed to be able to walk freely, even us as members of government. We don't walk around with armed security as many other countries across the world do. And that in of itself, Madam Speaker, is a blessing. The ability to be able to freely engage with our people, have our people be able to share their views very openly in public forums and settings is critically important. And I encourage our people, Madam Speaker, whether those views are in support of us or not, to be able to ventilate those issues, because the mark of any good democracy is the ability for our people to be able to ventilate issues that concern them in a very responsible and respectful way. And we continue to encourage that, Madam Speaker, as we approach Anguilla Day. I wish to wish particularly the members of the Valley North constituency a very blessed and happy Anguilla Day, and to continue to thank them for their continued support, their prayers, and all of their acknowledgement of my work continuously. So thank you again, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity, and again, a happy Anguilla Day to everyone.
Thank you, Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member Jason Bryan. I should say that I did give leave. Mr. Bryan indicated that he wanted to express his greeting in his native language as well, so you do have leave.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good morning to all honorable members of this House and anyone listening via other social media methods. Buenos días a cualquier hispanohablante que esté escuchando esta audiencia vía cualquier red social que se les sea posible en el momento. For me, it's a gratitude to be here this morning to address. And today, as we sit in this House as honorable members, not only as representatives, but as people that are son, daughter, and also grandchild, like I am, of a resilient nation like Anguilla, that 58 years ago understood that they should choose courage over just waiting to see what happened next, and freedom over fear. And as we approach the Anguilla Day, I would like to encourage every Anguillian to celebrate the day, because as the honorable member Richardson stated, that this is not just about a party, specific party, it's about every Anguillian. Deserve to celebrate and happy of where we are today and the progress we continue to make as we build as a nation. So I encourage everyone to just come out, celebrate, and attend all events in relations to Anguilla Day. And I would like to say in Spanish as well, le exhorto a toda la comunidad hispanohablante con raíces de Anguilla a que salgan durante en lo que se acerca el Día Nacional de Anguilla, a que salgan y disfruten, celebren el Día Nacional de Anguilla, porque aunque hablemos un idioma distinto al idioma local, también tenemos raíces de Anguilla y debemos celebrar de igual modo a todos los que viven en esta nación. And Madam Speaker, with your permission, I would like to also commend a young lady permit me.
Proceed, please.
Thank you. This month of May is also celebrated Lupus Month. And I would like to commend a young lady by the name of Anna Brooks for her effort that she has been placing on social media, bring awareness to the general public of what is lupus and what causes lupus. The suffers that whoever is binded to this disease naturally suffers. So I just wanted to raise today to commend her, congratulate her, and give her thanks for just bringing out such awareness, so much information, and myself as to what is lupus, and encourage her to continue to do the same as the years continue to progress, and that we as members also recognize the importance of lupus and provide the support to her and to any person suffering from just provide them with the support and be there for them. Thank you very, very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, member. Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the honorable member for Island Harbor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to give my condolences to those family and loved ones and friends of those who have passed, especially to Brother Clive Smith in the gallery, former chaplain of the House, who led us in prayer today. His brother passed, Mr. Aubrey Smith, will be laid to rest this coming weekend. So wish you God blessings and comfort and the rest of the family. Madam Speaker, we know that Anguilla Day is coming up on Friday, and certainly want to congratulate the honorees, especially Nurse Margaret, who did a yeoman's service, and we wish her well, and the other honorees, our revolutionary heroes and heroines. Want to thank them for their service, for their sacrifice, for putting their lives and their freedom on the line for us 58 years ago. And now we want to continue the legacy that they have set. And we do hope that those who are still alive and are able will come out on Friday, celebrate with us. I speak of those graduates who, from different levels, college, universities, even high schools and primary schools, who are graduating to another level. We want to congratulate them, and their teachers also, and those taking exams right now. We wish them the best and all success. And I want to, plead to our young people, especially our young men, that they know that this is a special week for Anguilla, and that they act accordingly to keep everyone safe, and then ask that everyone have a safe and happy Anguilla Day and a week. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. Are there any other members that wish to speak? I recognize the single island-wide electoral district member, Vanderpool.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd first like to start by saying, well, a pleasant good day to the people of Anguilla and my fellow members in the House. But I want to congratulate you on the success of your recent Mentor and Mingle event that was hosted in the United Kingdom. I would have gotten a lot of feedback from a number of the various students who attended and participated, and they truly did enjoy themselves. I would also like to join my colleagues in offering Happy Anguilla Day sentiments to the people of Anguilla, and particularly join in saying that at this time, I urge us all to put aside the political differences or other divisions in whatever way, shape, mean, or form. Because this week we are reminded that regardless of political affiliation, regardless of whatever else that divides us, we are all Anguillians. And the reason that I want us to dwell on that fact, Madam Speaker, is we keep advocating to our young people to come together, to be unified. But we have to realize that if we truly want them to be unified, if we want them to come together and put aside their differences, we have to give them the example to follow. so that while we come together this week, all as Anguillians, remembering that we are one people, there is no reason that this cannot extend beyond Anguilla. So I'm hoping that the example that we set this week and the urge that we have to our young people is something, a trend that follows and develops in the months and years to come. So that it's not just on Anguilla Day, but from Anguilla Day to Anguilla Day, we remember that we are all united, we are all one people. Because when we look at the contributions of our revolutionaries and those who have went before us to allow us to get to this place 58 years later, we have to ask ourselves, who was it done for? If our young people are taking each other out, there will be no future to inherit the Anguilla that we are all working so hard to build. So again, I want to wish everyone a happy Anguilla Day, urge our young people to come together because there is more that we have in common than what divides us, and to look forward to building a stronger and happier Anguilla together as one people. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, member. I recognize the Honorable Member Connor.
For West End. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And yes, Madam Speaker, I am older than 58. And I was there back in 1967 and 69, and they asked for women and children on the front line. I was there. So my colleague from North Hill, I did it for you. But on a serious note, Madam Speaker, there are a couple of things that I really want to say. I really want to point out the work that the AEP is doing, Anguilla Enhancement Project. And I go back to my first term in the House, when I asked for all Anguillians to donate 1 hour a month to clean up our island. Bottles, the cans, the litter. Some people laughed at it. Some people called me the Minister of Garbage. Even in this House, they called me that. But today, Madam Speaker, if you drive through Anguilla, you'll see other Anguillians who are driving, see what within the communities they're doing. They're proud of their village. They're proud of their island. And sometimes, Madam Speaker, when you're asking for your island and you want to lead by example, it is important that those who snigger about it should actually get off their butts and actually do something about it. I'm proud of my people in West End. I'm proud of them because for a number of years, that community spirit, what is lacking these days, Madam Speaker, when we go to the town halls, is that we have actually let down, our age group, have let down generation now. 13, 14, 15-year-olds that want to pick up a gun, shoot each other. We talk about what community was like when we were growing up, because the community was there. My mother was in England when I was age 1. I didn't see her until I was 15, but I didn't miss a mother, because the community, my aunt, my grandmother, my great aunt, the community were there. I have a father, but he was not there, but the community was there. I didn't miss a father until years later, when I saw what fathers in like Australia and England were doing for their children, that's what fathers should do. We in Anguilla, over the last 40 plus years, with tourism or the dollar has taken us away from our community. We call it progress. Sure, the progress in the dollar, but when our young people are prepared to kill each other, we all had fights when we were kids, but we didn't tell our parents or guardians at home we had a fight because we got licks for it. But today, Madam Speaker, we have to now, they've actually brought us back to reality. It is not about the dollar, it's about our community. Some people would ask about tourism and the effects on tourism. Well, if we do not look out for our young people, if we do not listen to them, if we do not meet their needs, the chances are there'll be no tourism. Or the tourism that we will have will not be about us as a people. We can pride ourselves about tourism. What makes us number one is our people. And again, what the member said from North Hill about the politics of it and how in church, where God is meant to be the being that brings us together, politics seems to have divided us. But who's doing it? It is us, the politicians. It's how we act, Madam Speaker. It's how we act. So when we talk about Anguilla Day, it should not just be for a week. It should not just be for a month. It should be as we go forward, all of us. We owe that to the next generations and generations to come. So for us, as the government, what I do know, there's a mantra of putting people first. And Madam Speaker, we will continue to do that. And if we do that, the chances are the Anguilla days going forward will be proud of to call Anguilla home. Those who are overseas will be following the boat race that goes around the island. That bonds us together as a people. I hate to tell the Premier, the former Premier, and the representative from District 5 that it's a Greyhound Day. It's a Greyhound Day. So Madam Speaker, and to all Anguillians, I ask you to enjoy yourselves and remember why you're doing it. It's because you're proud of this little rock we call Anguilla. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member. The Chair recognizes Honorable Single Island-wide Electoral District Member Hodge.
Madam Speaker, thank you. This is really good to be here in the House, speak to our people, to wish Anguillians here in Anguilla, and also those overseas, happy advance Anguilla Day. It's very hard to celebrate Anguilla Day overseas because when you look at the videos, the pictures, various activities, you would wish to be home. In place of that, I know in the UK and in the US, there are different celebrations throughout to sort of relive, celebrate together as Anguillians, wherever you are. And Speaker, the theme this year, fulfilling the dreams of our revolutionaries, making unity and patriotism our priorities. Theme is a very sobering one. It says, although we have made progress, we still have a long way to go as it relates to fulfilling, as it relates to strengthening our unity as a people. This unity should extend way beyond this week, where we pay close and special attention who we are as a people, our history, and where we are currently, where we intend to go. Unity extend 365 days here. Madam Speaker, I encourage us as a people. I say us, collective, one of us. Make this a reality for us to more unified, and for us as a people show patriotism throughout. I am indeed impressed with the patriotism I've seen in the last 3 weeks. I was privileged and fortunate to drive around the members of the Anguilla Enhancement Program, and I would have seen firsthand patriotism on steroids. Something this season, Madam Speaker, village competition gone at a different level in terms of showing the Anguillian patriotism, colors, displays, projects, every district, every village, Madam Speaker. It is beyond impressive. And I implore every Anguillian, during this Anguilla Day week and into the weekend, just drive around as families and as friends to every village to witness firsthand creations, the innovations that our people are capable of. Must say something particularly about West End. Visited that site at the Rogers well, Rogersville, right, alongside the main road. And as part of their display, Madam Speaker, they had national dish, actual national dish. Probably wasn't edible by end of day, but they had on display a plate with a seat cover, jacks, basically. That part of the entire display of who we are, what we are, traditions that we must certainly keep alive. So I want to say congrats to all the villages that took part. You are all winners. I know it's a competition, judged, very difficult competition to judge. I sympathize in advance those who are responsible judging. You are all winners. I'll leave that there. Madam Speaker, I just want to encourage everybody to come out ceremony in the park and also celebrate entire day as a boat race to follow. Then at 12 o'clock, senior citizens lunch, which our seniors a good lunch. Hopefully they'll be able to see some of this as well from that view. Madam Speaker, I want to make a special appeal while I'm on the floor. Young people, young men in particular, we have been going around speaking to various districts and having some town hall meetings. And I'm really impressed with the openness of people to speak at these. Gotten to a point, violence has gotten to a point where we can no longer be silent. We have to express, we have to share our ideas, what each and one of us can do. It is our homes. It starts in the home, then by the community, on to government, church, collective duty, citizen, ensure that our communities are safe, our homes are equipped. Challenge. Not easy. Many different reasons that lead. So it's happening. As a collective, we have to be cognizant of various challenges to assist. But my appeal is for us to put aside guns. We're not, as a people, wired to live in fear. And it is fear, main reason, responses that we see. Tonight, we're in Brown Point, 6 town halls tonight. Encourage unity to come out, dialogue with us, tackle of violence. Madam Speaker, I end by saying congratulations to all of the honorees.
Thank you, member. I recognize the Single Island White Electoral District member Rogers.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I too would like to echo the sentiments of my colleagues in this honorable House. And as the grandfather or great-grandfather of this honorable House, I would have been around, even though a young boy in 1967. I very well remember struggle. Born and grew up in Shoal Bay at the time, Madam Speaker. Was many public roads. Mentioned this morning about our dear departed brother Frank Gumbs, in terms of using the bulldozers and clearing the roads in Anguilla at the time. We were supposed to have been hijacked by the cutter. Some of those who, my age, that was the Navy boat from St. Kitts. That was directed by then Llewellyn Bradshaw, Premier of St. Kitts at the time. So I'm very well aware of a bit of the history of the revolution. The Anguilla Day, Madam Speaker, born out of a struggle, people's struggle. People for the Anguillan people. They rose up in arms against St. Kitts Nevis. Would have preferred to be ruled directly by the British government. Times and things have changed since then. The point I want to make is that we rose up against what was a suppressive regime. It wasn't in our favor, and at the time, it would have limited us in terms of our development. Today, as a people, we don't have the threat of the St. Kitts Nevis government oppressing us anymore or hindering our progress. We have in our country a situation whereby government, as a people, as parents, churches, social services, we have got to band together again. The spirit, the Anguillan Revolution, save our dear beloved land and our people. So while it is that we are appealing, and we should be appealing to our young people, we've got to recognize, Madam Speaker, that all of us need to band together to be able to save our country. It was the Anguillians, the late Ronald Webster and Atlin Harrigan, and a number of those revolutionary leaders, all who would have played important part in the revolution at the time. They were fighting against government and the regime in Kitts, outside of it. Today, we're sitting here in this honorable house, and we must come together, even though we're on different sides of the divide, to be able to solve problems that we have here. Yes, it's wonderful to have our premier, former premier, coming together with a joint statement. It's good, it is admirable. But as a people, those who have the tendencies to do evil against one another for whatever reason, a bigger picture. I understand the domino effect. But at the end of the day, we must also be cognizant of the forgiveness. Savior has said, Lord, forgive them, for they know not what they've done. And they were crucifying him on the cross. You take my brother out, whether it's my blood brother or a member of my team or gang, or whatever nomenclature we want to use. And if we continue, Madam Speaker, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, we would have thrown the forgiveness aspect through the window. It would mean then there is no ending to it. We continue. And I am appealing to all the young folks, the parents, we've got to put an end to it. That is my appeal on this 58th Anguilla Day celebration. So let us come together in that spirit, where we don't have to fight against St. Kitts, folks don't have to travel the water to go up to St. Kitts to try to overthrow St. Kitts. But to have an atmosphere, an environment of forgiveness, because a lot of families have been hurt. A lot of families have lost loved ones. Where will this end without the forgiveness aspect? So, the APM supporters are not coming to the park or to the celebration because their administration is not in office. Again, let's forgive them. Everyone has a right to decide who they would want to vote. Remember, at the end of the day, we are all with them. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, member. And I believe the honorable member from Sandy Hill wishes to wrap up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me first start by extending my condolences to the family, friends, and loved ones of Mr. Frank Fox. I was saddened to hear of his passing. I did not know of him personally, but two of his siblings who recently passed away were constituents of my district. Pastor Norrell Gomes and Patricia Charles. And so in the space of months, they will have each passed on. And so I know that the family is grieving, and I wish them the very best. And also to those who would have recently lost loved ones, I also extend my condolences to them. Madam Speaker, I want to place on record my thanks to you, as Speaker of the House and the clerk, for attending the UK, for making impressive representations, not just to the Speaker in the UK and your fellow counterparts, but also to the young people who, it appears, came from near and far to be able to participate. And as I've said before, I believe that you have cut a whip for yourselves, because I think that the turnout was so good that there's an expectation that this is something that will continue. And I want you to know that you have the full support of the members of the government, and indeed the members of the entire House, in terms of this exercise that you embarked on. So congratulations to you. I also want to thank the Honorable Shirley Rogers Webster for her personal presence at the Anguilla Day activities in the UK. I know from time to time some of us are able to attend, and our presence is much appreciated. And so I want to thank her for taking the opportunity, taking the time to be there in person and to greet our Anguillans in the diaspora. And as we all know, many of them pay attention to what's happening here in Anguilla. They get the information quicker than we who are here on the ground. And so we know that they've always maintained an interest wherever they are, and even though they are away from home. This week's activities, Madam Speaker, I think highlights the national pride and the spirit of unity that reminds me of the talk. I wasn't there, days of the revolution. But when you hear the talk, when you read the history books, when you listen to those who were there, who fought in the revolution, the spirit of coming together for the sake of the country, and they were united in one purpose, Madam Speaker. And seeing what is taking place across this country in terms of people coming out, communities coming out, says to me that we can transcend the issues that we are currently experiencing in this country. And so I look forward to the continued collaboration of all of our community members, community leaders, the church, as we move forward and we address the issues that are facing us here in Anguilla. And I have no doubt that we will overcome. So, Madam Speaker, with that being said, while I'm on my feet, I suppose I can go.
I just have two apologies
Thank you,
before, if you're grateful. There were two apologies received that we overlooked earlier, and I apologize. We have an apology from the Minister Richardson, member for Valley South, who is away on government business, and the Honorable Acting AG. I also omitted one announcement that I wanted to put the House on notice. There were 3 members from the Valley North constituency that have pledged and made a very kind and thoughtful contribution to this House. They heard my request for a clock at the first sitting, and they set out to create something that was thoughtful and in commemoration of Anguilla Day. They hadn't been able to place it this morning. They're going to place it later today. So you'll see it announced. It's made of Anguilla stone, donated by Mr. Cleophas Gums. It was the brainchild of Mr. Omar Hodge, a young person. And I understand Mr. Robson Petty, who's done quite a bit of work in the House, has also created a frame. So on our next sitting, you'll see our personalized Anguilla stone made clock for the House. And we'd like to thank them in advance. And I think it would be remiss of me if I did not speak on just briefly on the Anguilla Day celebrations and the national pride. While I was away, I had the pleasure of hearing one of my neighbors comment on how beautiful the areas had been decorated, and her not being a national, but felt very compelled to celebrate. This morning when I was leaving, I saw an Anguilla wreath on her door, and she's originally from St. Kitts, Anguillan. So it just shows that love begets love, and national pride goes a long way. And I commend both sides of the House for the positions that you have taken on these. Unless there's anything further, I now invite the honorable member from Sandy Hill to move for the adjournment of this House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that this honorable House be adjourned until Tuesday, June 10th at 10 a.m.
And I invite a member to second.
Rise to second, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, member. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. This honorable House is adjourned until its next sitting, June 10th at 10 a.m. promptly. Thank you for your time and attention today, and happy Anguilla to everyone when it comes.